So we just talked about how we can communicate as ourselves, communicate with each other, even in interview settings. And all of these are super important, given that we're, of course, online and all they can see is your upper body and hear you. So today, what I'm going to be talking about is all the other modes of communication that relate to your own club. So now you're not only representing yourself, but you're mostly actually representing your club and your organization and all that stands for, from brand to tactics to strategy. So let me share my screen real quick. And then after a quick introduction, we'll do a quick breakout. It'll probably feel too short. But essentially, you guys know Harvard has such a big name. Just by slapping it on an event, you can get, thousands of high schoolers to be really interested. So what I'm trying to do is really democratize that, to be able to use all of these really excited people outside of Harvard and even, adjacent, to provide and really learn from everything that we're sort of being overwhelmed with, because they can, of course, do it a little better than we might even be able to do it. So that means reaching out. And so far, I have over 100,000 emails in my Gmail. One of my Slacks has over 1 million. This one has 500,000, the one I'll be focusing on today. And across events, just hosting panels and events every month. And actually something I've struggled with is trying to reach out to Harvard students, because I found like it's a lot harder to engage compared to a lot of the nonprofit stuff I've been doing. So here are just some, screenshots of the above. As you can see here, these are all the emails. You'll notice that 30,000 of them are GMAS, which is basically, they let me know if people open an email or not. There are similar things called Streak. I'll get to that in a moment. Also, different mail merges. And of these, you'll see that only 10,000 emails, so 10% of all my emails are direct, like 5,000 from me, 5,000 from other people. And this, of course, is a big problem that I'm trying to tackle with my project, which I'll get to on Thursday. You'll also see that, of course, we have this beautiful calendar, which tends to be underutilized. And here's one of the Slacks that I was talking about, where it has a lot of these integrations that, of course, people can take advantage of, and is the purpose of trying to create Harvard Serves Online, and then hopefully Harvard Online as well. So quick interactive things. What tools do you currently use to communicate? Do you have any thoughts about them? What's annoying you? How can I help you today? Just drop those in chat, raise your hand, whatever works. And while you guys do that, I can do a regular Harvard introduction. I'm a sophomore. I'm supposed to be in Dunster, currently in New York. I'm studying economics, probably going to do AM or CS as secondary. Also taking course 6 courses at MIT right now. If there's like one thing you take away from this presentation that's not relevant to the presentation, it's cross-register. So Jessica says Facebook Messenger, events, group me, email, and Slack. So obviously, huge difference here, and of course, all different tech stacks. They all are really different in terms of who can engage. And seems like a lot of people are using GroupMe. That's that's always popping off for at least the class of 2023. And Shivy's use Streak, so Streak is for tracking. And we got some really cool ones. I love Discord. I love Notion, just because it's really easy to get everybody involved. Yeah, and then in terms of tactics, which we'll get to later, something I wanted to mention is there are some specific things which work best. So if you guys want to drop in the chat any sort of thoughts on like an event that went really well because you used one tool or because you used one strategy, like Shivy earlier mentioned, hey, you can force your members to send out everything to their mailing list and to actually bring a friend. Different sort of things. And the purpose of this is, of course, since this is recorded, we can go back and think and actually apply these to our own things. Anyone have suggestions there? All right, cool. We'll just have you guys discuss that in breakout rooms. So you can set up rooms of 3, and then in here, just trying to think about SWOT, so that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to communication. Generally, this is used for like people and things. So in terms of communication, I want to think about what has been working and why, and the same thing for why it hasn't been working. And after that, I'll be talking about strategy, the processes, people involved, as well as, most crucially, the tactics I've used. So if you want to open up the breakout rooms. Thank you. Oh, welcome back. If any of you felt inspired by that, feel free to share about the stuff you've learned. One big thing in communication I've realized, and I think it's pretty obvious, is there's far more brain, man, and just general power in the receivers, in the audience, than as opposed to speaking. So as much as we can like cede that power, that space, I think only good can come from that, as long as it's structured. Anyone want to share what the group talked about?
Our group kind of talked about Slack and Google Calendar, but in specifics to Google Calendar, just the way that it ensures accountability amongst people, and like in regards to time zones, how it allows people to just like accommodate all time zones because Google Calendar automatically changes. But then in the way, one problem that could come up when like scheduling things on there is people like forgetting that not everybody's like in the Eastern time zone. So that's something I sometimes run into and I get mad about, because people forget that I'm an hour behind when we're scheduling stuff.
Yeah, it's usually important to be, cognizant of who's actually receiving it, where they're at, especially, there's a good chance they might not even see what you're sending. And same thing for that. Oh, Olivia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think Slack is like a perfect multi-purpose tool. I was saying my organization uses it to like communicate about the week-to-week responsibilities of our jobs, but we also use it to share memes, and those can exist in separate channels and like help to build community overall.
Absolutely. I think some people are really hesitant to do it because there's this void that when you send it out, there's like 1,000 people in the channel, you get like one response. And I think that's not the point of Slack for engagements, rather for people who are already engaged, to figure things out and to get a sense of, what's going on and do that multimodally, as you mentioned. So yeah, just for the sake of time, feel free to drop stuff in the chat. That's another mode. So in terms of strategy, I'm sure you've seen stuff like this before where it's like marketing, right? In a sense, everything you're doing when it's a message is advertising, is marketing, is communications. And there's whole majors of this, obviously not Harvard, but everyone is doing this all the time, especially now. So although we might not feel like we're promoting or selling a product, especially since it's free, this is what is being done. So we must think of incentives and step out of our own frame of mind into the audience and to see like, why might they actually want to do this? So the last presentation that Olivia and I had, we talked about incentives like exclusivity, clout, just general community. And these things all contribute to the club identity, the brand that the organization has. And you'll see there's some really new clubs that have done this really well. So for example, HODP, they are now getting like $20,000 in funding like each year from the UC, despite having been created recently. Or like the recent consulting groups, they just arrived like 2 years ago, and now they have like 50 or so people. So obviously different missions here, especially compared to our organization. But what they do well is this thing called soapstone. It's a rhetorical technique. I learned it in AP language. It's subject, occasion, audience, purpose, speaker, tone. So in every communication, you can rhetorically analyze it and figure out how these things match with each other, which ultimately contributes to people caring. And then one thing that you might want to think about is, what will they remember from your email? Is it the meme? Is it that everything was highlighted in different colors? Is it that it's just, here's the link? Is it that it was actually a Google Calendar invite and it sort of forced its way into their calendar? And all of these things have second order effects. Other people might want to copy what you're doing. Other people might want to share that. And that means, being really open to collaboration is also part of the vibe, I think, that will improve any sort of communication. So now that we've talked about what it is, how you might want to think about doing it, here's some ways that I've done it. So one, there's Harvard tools. As you can see at the top is the Facebook, so the original. Interestingly, in the movie, the Social Network, Zuckerberg had to hack into these houses to get their faces. In our case, it's listed for everybody, just in one place. It's kind of scary. When you register, you can choose whether to disclose that information or not. And I won't be going there since the compilation is forbidden, but you are allowed to use that for actually contacting people, right? So this is excellent if you want to look at specific concentration specific people, especially if you don't know their email, etc. This is essentially a directory. Then we have, the hub. This is actually an amazing tool that people don't really use, since I think they don't really understand it. So I won't be going into it today, but definitely check it out. You're allowed to contact any organization through this. There are forms to, of course, get more funding, figure out partnerships, make sure that you're following the right policies when it comes to inviting minors to, for example, attend Zoom events, and just general, best practices. Interestingly, the SOCIO has, office hours every Wednesday, 10 to 12. Finally, HCS and FAS provide mailmen. So every university uses this. It's extremely HTML. So it looks like it was made in 2005, which it kind of was. And I can briefly just show like all of these things in action. So as you can see here, we can go to the admin interface, and then you just drop in your password. The reason I'm showing this is because right now you can't actually create one of these. You have to ask the Coding Society to create it up for you. So you can see you can change administrators, you can add members, etc. Next is Facebook. Let's say I want to know who else is named Lucas, to create a Lucas club on campus. That's actually the last name. So now we can go and see, wow, we will have like 8 people. Finally, with the hub, as you can see, I was literally just screenshotting this. This is excellent just because of this huge feed, which you can actually subscribe to using the calendar. Just in terms of time, there is a lot to go in here. So if any of you want me to explain things, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, I wanted to also talk about nonprofit tools. So as you can see, Discord is really active. This is actually the Harvard Discord. Also, there's something known as Otter.ai, which I am actually recording right now, which I assumed I could do because it is also being recorded on your end. So what you can see is it does synchronous transcription, which means you have this for free. You can actually add it to your webinars, add it to your meetings, and you'll see a subtitle. This is great for accessibility. It's great for people who don't pay attention because they can just go and see what was just said a couple seconds ago. Then we also have Notion. That is absolutely beautiful, which you can see here. You can just, edit anything you want, and it's great because you can embed things. Like you can share a code of conduct. You can create a table for people to update things. And then finally, because you have an Harvard account, you actually have access to something called GMass because someone in the directory is paying for it. Basically, you can take a spreadsheet, mail merge. As you can see, I've been doing like thousands of emails here. And it's great because, it can tell you, exactly who's opening what. So finally, in terms of what you should do in the future, in terms of improving, think about personas and customer segmentation, like who's going to click on it, who's going to sign up, and then who's actually going to show up. Those are actually very different populations. Think about a framework for a content plan. Is it a weekly series? Do you want it to actually become a podcast, something that anybody can access or only at Harvard? And finally, for awareness, there are a lot of different tools you can do, both administratively and within your club. So this is why Messenger is really great because you can straight up call people. And then while you guys were all in breakout rooms, I actually talked to Abby, and she mentioned one tactic she learned was essentially, in order for people to remember something, they need to see it 3 times. And as we all know, some clubs like to go overboard with this, and we get 12 emails about one event. But sticking to tricolon through different avenues might be the best idea. So for example, putting in the group me, and then having an email, and then following up, say, using an email list that you already have. And in general, I'm a big fan of minimalism. So this is essentially, how can we make your words have their biggest utility as soon as possible while being still interesting, right? And this is something that I personally struggle with. I tend to overload people like I'm kind of doing right now. So now I wanted to talk about what are some extensions that you can explore on your own time that have been tried and true. So one, of course, Qualtrics. It's better than Google Forms because you can see exactly from what IP are people doing things at. So this is good for validation. And like all the industry standard best types of questions, as well as data points like how long did they spend on this question? Did they even click the question? It's kind of scary. Then we have Typeform, which does the same thing in a tabular fashion. And then all of these things that we were talking about before. So I love actually Whimsical. I've been using it for activity. Also, I actually own the link tree for Harvard. So if any of you want to like add things to that, I right now I just have some basic things in here that are might be helpful for students if you want to share that. And then finally, you have a lot of amazing people advising you, and I'm happy, of course, to talk about any of these confusing things offline. But I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully, communication seems less anxiety-inducing, more interesting, and yeah, thanks for listening.